we are going to follow the money.
Everything you need to know can be understood with this simple phrase: follow the money. And believe me, that's what's happening.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Welcome to College Sports Follow the Money, an all-new podcast diving into the critical issues surrounding the big business of college sports. I'm Andrew Monaco, joined by former president of Texas A&M University and former chancellor at the University of Missouri, Dr. Bowen Loftin, and former vice president and general manager of Fox Sports Southwest, Jon Heidtke. From NIL to the transfer portal and opt-outs, to the college football playoff, conference realignment, and more, we tackle the key issues facing college athletics today and into the future.
I need to feel you, Jerry! Show me the money! Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money! Show me the money! You love this black man!
This is episode 61. On this edition of College Sports Follow the Money, it's not just the three of us. We've added a fourth. We have an infield. See? Trying to be clever. Jon Heidtke, please introduce Jason Penry.
All right, and batting cleanup today on the lineup will be Jason Penry, because we're going to be talking a lot about college baseball, and this is one of this man's passions. Jason is currently works with the baseball searches for College Sports Associates, which is one of the top 3 search firms in the country handling college athletics. Back in 2018, he started a forum called Surefire Baseball to start to get assistant coaches at the D1 level in front of administrators and other coaches so they could help advance their career in a time when, baseball was not quite as popular as today. He was also the chair of the board of the College Baseball Foundation. He holds multiple degrees, including a PhD degree from A&M. But probably the most important thing about Jason, that he and I are both professors of practice in the A&M Sports Management Program. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Hey, thank you, John. A very kind introduction, and really look forward to talking college baseball today. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to this.
I'm thrilled John read that word for word.
Quick comment here, Andrew. I first met Jason on the campus of Arkansas State University when Missouri was playing a non-conference game there. He sought me out, and we've been crossing paths ever since, basically. So we go back a little ways, sir.
Yes, I've been learning from Bowen for over a decade now.
Learning what's the question? Event. We recorded our very first episode on this date in 2021. So this is our 3rd anniversary of this particular episode, or podcast, shall we say. We're doing episode 61. So we aimed at doing, every other week. We haven't quite made that goal every time, but we're still chugging along here, 61 in to a 3-year history now, my friends. And we certainly appreciate you. And we also remember Gabe Bach, who started out with us and really helped for our initial year and a half or 2 years almost. And now we have dear Andrew with us as well. So it's been a good run, guys, and we have more to come. Absolutely.
And if you're interested in sponsoring this fine podcast, please contact any one of us, and we'll be glad to have you join the program.
And college.
So Jason's signed on as a sponsor. I didn't know that, guys. Thank you, Jason.
See, if you sponsor, you get to be part of the show. We're writing our own rules here.
He didn't pay for play. I get it.
He didn't read the fine print.
Pay for play. Yeah, I get it.
collegesportsftm@gmail.com for your questions that we will answer. We'll put this up first, that I didn't think all the drama was going to be outside of Charles Schwab Field after the College World Series in Omaha, but it certainly was after the plane landed back in College Station, and obviously back in Knoxville as well. But what a week, huh? What a week. And I think that's an understatement.
Amen to that. Gentlemen, I won't make any real comments here. I mean, we were all stunned by the events of this past week. It's been difficult for most of us who had a lot of personal connections here to somehow reconcile all this in our minds. But I have to say again, follow the money, gentlemen. There's lots of money involved potentially here, and we can talk about aspects of that going forward. I will say that our coach at Texas A&M was was pretty well paid. He was kind of middle of the pack in terms of SEC pay for a baseball coach. And I suspect he'll move up that pack somewhat, but I'm not sure that was the only factor monetarily that played into what went down this week here. But I'm interested in talking to Jason about many things, including baseball. What do you hear out there in terms of the future of baseball in the SEC and beyond, Jason?
Well, the future of the baseball in the SEC is, the SEC is by far the leading conference, and I don't think that's new news. But you see it in the College World Series, right, with 4 teams coming from the SEC and 4 from the ACC, and the concentration of power and the power conferences is continues. It continues, and the last 20 years, Bowen, it's been Fresno State in 2008, and then Coastal Carolina in 2016. But besides those 2 programs, even before the world of NIL, you still had a concentration of power, but now it's probably even more so. So I'm not sure if we're going to see more of the Oral Roberts type stories happen too often in the future.
Yeah, amen to that. Besides NIL, Jason, what role does the facility play in terms of success? I mean, obviously contributes to recruiting and maybe retention as well of great players and attracting great coaches. So are facilities really a equal partner, shall we say, with NIL today in terms of making it work?
I would say so. There's places like Dallas Baptist. They have pitching labs and some of the facilities that you don't see on game day that have really made a difference, I believe, in player development. So athletes, baseball athletes, they still look at that sort of thing. And I know, an example of that at another school is Wake Forest. Wake Forest has a well-known pitching lab, a lot of technology way over my head, and a lot of science involved. And they were able to pull Chase Burns from University of Tennessee to Wake for much less, I'm told, for like 1/5 of the NIL money. So I think it still matters, the player development piece, because many of these athletes are not thinking about maybe the next handful of years or the next year, but what does it look like for them in 5 years or 10 years where they really going to make money, potential to make some really big money.
So you're saying that a player will not just consider the immediacy of a college team and how they can work there, but how it will develop them to be competitive in terms of getting drafted by the MLB and getting into the real serious club of money as an MLB player. Is that what you're saying to us?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, not obviously Ohtani's, signed his big deal for $700 million, but guys, they all have advisors, just like college coaches. 10 years ago, only a handful of college coaches had agents. Well, the players, they all have agents, they all have advisors, and the advisors, at least the good ones, they're thinking of what does it look like in 5 years? What does it look like in 10 years? Especially when you're eligible for that first big contract as a free agent. And they're trying to put them on a pathway to hopefully get paid in the future. And these advisors are really pushing them to where can they get drafted, where can they develop, and that it's funny you talk about player development. One of the things that I've really noticed in the world of NIL, where players are getting these 6-figure deals, is that many of them, especially with the shortened draft since the pandemic in 2020, is a lot of talent is being concentrated where they can get paid and maybe not sign as a 15th round draft pick, but they're playing against the best players. And because of that, you're seeing their time in the minor leagues shortened pretty significantly. Of course, a prime example of that's Paul Skeens with LSU going in less than 12 months, or about 12 months, going from the College World Series to the big leagues. But again, the concentration of talent and success at the SEC and ACC is just incredible. And it's tougher for programs. You're seeing the pickups in the transfer portal, or at least that I'm following. But it's now, I played junior college baseball, and those rosters turn over every 2 years. And for many of the programs, kind of in the mid-tier, even the Sun Belt to some degree, which is probably the fourth best out of 30 conferences, you're seeing a lot of talent being rated from those types of programs, kind of the mid-tier, lower tier, Division I, Division II, Division III. Even I saw there was a lefty signing at Division III level, but yeah. So again, the concentration of power in college baseball is a thing. It is a big thing.
Reminding me of a player I got to know when I was president of Texas A&M. His name was Michael Waka, and he was a good pitcher here at Texas A&M. He graduated while I was president, or at least he got his diploma while I was president, or a tube. It may have contained a diploma. I won't say more than that. And went on to the minor leagues. He was drafted in the minor leagues, but then within 1 year, what was he doing? Pitching in a World Series. So it can happen very quickly. And that was several years ago. So I understand what you're saying about these days of rapidity with which you can move from being a college player to a minor league player to an MLB player, and even maybe doing something in a World Series context as an MLB player. That's pretty interesting, how fast that can happen. And it has to be an attractant to these young men.
Yeah, and the scouts that evaluate them, they can see them playing against the very best. And sometimes it's hard to translate talent from college to the pros, but the SEC, ACC, Big 12, even Sun Belt, which I would say is the fourth best conference in college baseball, you play in those conferences, and week in, week out, particularly in the SEC and ACC, those two conferences, you have a really, it's much easier to judge how a player is going to project in the next 2-3 years. Seeing them play against the very best instead of there was a pitcher that was from East Texas that threw 100 miles an hour, and I forget the guy's name. I think his first name was Colt, but he was drafted, I want to say, either second overall or third overall, and he just totally overmatched these 2A, 3A players. So it's hard to project somebody like him. Of course, he didn't make it, but you play against the SEC and you average a strikeout or 2 strikeouts an inning as a pitcher, you know that you're legitimate. You know that you're going to be really good in the years to come.
So you're saying a Prager and Auchenbach's going to be okay, huh?
I think so, and I hope so.
Hey, Jason, do you see now with NIL that the guys that normally would sign with a Major League Baseball team now is not going to college experience because the money might be even equal, in some cases better? What does the Major League now do to try to help these colleges, particularly at these high levels, make sure that this is going to be their future, the Paul Skeens of the world? Are you going to see them try to help more and create, could they be involved in this process to make that college experience even better?
Well,
from a developmental standpoint?
Yeah, I think MLB, there's always kind of been a weird relationship with the timing of the draft, and there's always been some kind of how would I say it? Some kind of tension. But I think that MLB, I think they enjoy it because they contracted, right, the number of minor league franchises, so they see college baseball, they see the coaches, it used to, 50, 60 years ago, I hear stories about college baseball is a total afterthought, or much, for the most part, an afterthought. But now it plays such a critical piece in the development of talent. And coaches are really good. The facilities are really good. The training staff, athletic training staff, just all the resources that are involved now. It wasn't that case even when I played college ball in the mid 90s and was around, and a lot of my friends were playing at SEC type programs, Big 12 programs. So that it's changed so much
I look at the situation again, using A&M as an example with their pitching staff. They're bringing the guy Max Weiner from the Mariners, and I think again he had a significant impact on this team. And I think again, are you going to see maybe more MLB coaches like that looking to cut their teeth here because they're going to be getting, I mean, this level of I would even say now the SEC is probably AAA plus right now, and the level of ball players there from a developmental standpoint. So it would seem that if the MLB wants to make sure these players, the Wyatt Langfords of the world, are going to be successful in the big leagues, that there could be more, you maybe see more transition from coaches from that league moving down to the collegiate level, particularly at the at the SEC level or ACC level.
But yeah, and the power levels, absolutely. I can see more of that happening because the salaries are so big. I saw the Monty Lee and the new South Carolina assistant coaches making about $500,000 a year. That's unreal to think about how far it's come in the last 10 to 20 years. But the trend was that college coaches would go to the professional levels. And now we're kind of seeing, like you're alluding to, a reverse trend. And frankly, it's because the money is so great. But when I was at Arkansas State, T. Dickinson, we lost him to the minor leagues. He went to, I want to say, the Yankees. He left Arkansas State as a pitching coach and went to the Yankees. And that started a pretty significant trend about 10 years ago. But yeah, now you're seeing these professional coaches try to come back, and been part of a few searches over the years, particularly one we just completed at the University of Dayton. And you do see a lot of interest from professional coaches.
Wes Johnson left pro ball to be a pitching coach at LSU, gets the head job at Georgia. He just got an extension through 2030. I'm with you. I think you're going to see that trend. I'm going to add one more thing. 30 years ago, I'm in minor league baseball. And to your point, Jason, the tension that was there, pro teams could not wait to get their hands on college guys and shake the college out of them. But we also remember 30 years ago, the bats were completely different. It was closer to guerrilla ball, right? Pitchers were still pitching Friday and closing on Sunday. So it took a little while. But I think it's way, way more to your point. I think MLB does appreciate the coaching that they get, the competition that they get. I think that's huge. I think that's a big change. And to your point, 20 rounds in the draft, fewer picks, can't miss. You can't gamble so much like you could in picks 21 through 40. And here's the other selling point for college baseball. If you come here for 3 years, wherever it is in the SEC, ACC, Sun Belt, Pac-12, 2, whatever it is now, you're going to be playing on better fields. You're going to travel better. You're going to eat better. You're going to train better, all that. I think that's another thing. Now what baseball needs to do, Major League Baseball, they wanted to move the draft to the Monday in Omaha before the College World Series started. COVID happened. MLB, obviously, it's their own initiative and prerogative. They've moved it to All-Star.
Yeah, without question, the investment in college athletics has been incredible. Not only the operating budgets and all the auxiliaries like the training staff, nutrition. I go into some of the visiting or some of the other SEC parks and see the amount, from wall to wall, the number of snacks and protein bars and just these things. I'm just thinking, wow, the money that goes into this is amazing. And of course, we've always seen that it always starts in football and then goes to basketball. And then, it always trickles down to college baseball. And I think we're seeing, and Bowen mentioned this earlier about Schloss, I think we're seeing some of those ruthless, cutthroat type of actions now in college baseball. And it's just amazing to hear the feedback that move has gotten from the national media, and of course here in Aggieland.
Well, it was the story of the week, no question about that. Aggies obviously were upset and focused on it, but I was just surprised how much national attention we got. Every sports show I listened to quite a few of them at a national level was talking about it. And it was a surprise to everyone. I think that in this level of the press, there apparently were a few people in the press who were aware of this as it was developing. All the times of a sports department is simply knowledge and rumor, and this one was kept quieter than I would expect it to be. Question for you, I guess, regarding players. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the portal being occupied by some of the A&M players. There's been talk about text messages sent by burner phones beforehand. What do you make of all that stuff? Is there any fire behind this smoke?
My take, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me, and yeah, it's unfortunate, but it wouldn't surprise me. And Bowen, it even the news of Schloss leaving didn't surprise me. It was kind of a known secret, if I can say that. But probably for the last at least 3 weeks, and I had people calling me and saying, "Hey, I heard this is going to happen," and I heard it from enough people, and there was a grand plan, and so who knows how it all went down, but what I tell my relatives, my friends, my family, I'll tell them the same thing. I said I am extremely optimistic about Aggie baseball. So we have one of the top 10 jobs. I would say that with extreme confidence. We have a top 10 job. We have 12th man is section 203. All these things, the bubbles, ball 5 chant. We are a power. And Rob Childress took us to a level and went to a regional every year. And then Schloss came in and he gave us two of our best years in his 3-year tenure, I should say. And we are positioned to keep that going. Will a few of our guys transfer out? I think we might have a down year next year, but the beauty in this day and age with the transfer portal is we can turn it around in a year or two, even if we do have a down year. But we are positioned with the $80 million renovation, all of these things. I think we're more galvanized than ever to keep this thing going and lead it to even greater heights. And I think we will. Because that's what we do. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun too. But I'm extremely optimistic. It's not like someone's leaving and we're not going to get someone just as good, if not better. And a lot of great coaches, I know this for a fact, want this job and are proactively reaching out. So we're going to be fine. We're going to be great. And if you don't want to be here in Aggieland, then, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So that's the way I look at it.
Years ago, when he first got here, I looked at Schloss's contract. I didn't think too much about it. I saw the contract. It was pretty standard. The pay was pretty good. And he was stepped up year to year through the entire contract. Pretty normal thing. The one thing that caught my attention, which I didn't think too much about at the time, was this clause about doubling the buyout if he chooses to go to another Texas school. Clearly, the only one likely to be the case would be in Austin. Have you seen that kind of a clause oftentimes yourself and looking over these kinds of contracts, Jason?
I've heard of it every now and then, but I would say it's rare. But again, my piece of the world is college baseball and fundraising, and you don't see that often in college baseball. At least I'm unaware.
Yeah, it was surprising to me. I had not seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen 100+ contracts in my time as a chancellor and president. So I've seen a lot of contracts. This was the only one I recall which had that kind of clause in it. That's didn't really stick with me at the moment when I read through it the first time back in the first year he was here. I just looked at it soon after he got here at Texas A&M, and I was a little bit surprised by it. This didn't really ring a bell with me as it probably should have. That this was somebody's effort to really protect Texas A&M from exactly what happened. Didn't work, obviously. It still happened. It just doubles the cost to bring this guy from one place to the other, a little over 100 miles apart. It's what it is. I've been through a lot of coaching changes, both voluntary and non-voluntary changes during my career. So I've seen lots of this happen. And I'm not surprised by it. I wasn't too pleased with how it all happened and how it came out. But it is one of those things you expect to happen in a dynamic world of college athletics. And money speaks louder. I'm not sure that the salary was the only reason this happened. You mentioned $80 million for a stadium. Well, that's not real money yet. What the Board of Regents of Texas A&M system did was to place on the capital plan an item, which is a redo of a baseball stadium with a price tag of $80 million. There was no money behind that. And what I saw happening was that the 12-man foundation at Texas A&M was directed to focus elsewhere, at least for this moment. And there was no real effort being made to raise money for baseball except by one person, the coach. And that may have been a factor in his decision to leave. I can't tell you that for a fact by any means, but I know that he wasn't pleased with having to be totally responsible for fundraising here for an $80 million, probably $80 million plus renovation. Clearly, if you ever slosh through the water, pardon the pun there, in the bottom of our baseball stadium at Texas A&M, you understood the need. I mean, every time it rained a little bit, water got into the areas below the stadium there where the offices and all the facilities were for the players. And that was certainly irritating. And it wasn't right, but that's the way he inherited it. So we redid the stadium during my time as president to a tune of $24 million. But it wasn't all taken care of. And part of the thing we didn't take care of was just basically the weather tightness of the facility, and the fact that it was low enough that water ran into it when we had rain, and that was not a good thing.
Hey, Jason, I think the thing that's created a lot of hue and outcry on this is just, how it all happened. And if this is any other sport or any other league at a professional, there would be tampering. There would be a lot of other potential sanctions that would be coming down from whoever's running your particular league. So when you talk to the baseball community right now, and is this something that they're worried about? And as they all get together and says, how do we create things like, again, it is the wild, wild west, but do you feel that as the baseball community gathers together, do they feel that they can create some rules and regulations that could potentially limit that type of overt tampering, or create penalties or sanctions that would be someday that would be to maybe dissuade those types of things from happening?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I don't know. I'd love to get y'all's take on that. I'm not sure that can even happen without a czar commissioner, or maybe at the commissioner's level. I'm not sure, but I think everyone was surprised that happened. That's reality. So we're going to be great. We're going to be great. Will we be down next year? Possibly, quite possibly. Will we be down in 2 years? I don't think so. I'm very optimistic. We've tasted success. We've had, again, two of the best years we've ever had in the last 3-year run, and I think we know, and we rallied behind it, and the atmosphere was electric this year. And we're going to hire a great coach, and he's going to lead us to a place we've hopefully never been before, and that's a national title. But the proof will be in the pudding. But I'm just optimistic. I think it's totally unfortunate, and I've had a text message. One of the text messages that I really thought was interesting was from a coach: is this all going to be worth it? Like, you just go scorched earth and treat people like trash? Is like that kind of sends a message, right? But it's like I forget what it was. Something like, is this all worth it? That you just want to just treat people like trash and not do things the right way. In terms of my friends in college baseball, there's one thing that really bothers them, and it's announcing the firing, which probably happened at least 2 weeks before, on the day of the national championship. And just talking about the athletes for Tennessee and the athletes for us, for the Aggies, I mean, that's unreal. That part of it is just very bothersome as a just college baseball geek and somebody that loves following this. That's out of all days. I still would love a great explanation that we probably will never get, but that is it's nuts. That's insane. And it was uncalled for. Why would you? I mean, I still blows my mind, and I would love to if y'all ever see an explanation on that. That's the piece that I'd like an answer on. It's like, why on the day of that you make that announcement? That's the silliest, goofiest thing I've ever seen, and that's frankly the piece that has pissed a lot of people off, as we all know.
That's true enough.
Terrible way to treat David Pierce as well.
Yeah, I think that having this news come out at the time of a national championship game detracts from the players who competed. I mean, they deserve the spotlight.
It does.
Totally. And they didn't get it because of both what Texas did in terms of firing a coach and what a coach at another school did in terms of departing that very time frame. So I really felt bad for the players not having all the limelight they deserved at that point in time. I think timing is an important issue here. As you all know, July 1 is the date on which Texas and Oklahoma both joined the SEC. There are some SEC rules that are in play that are more strict than the current NCAA approach to this in terms of students transferring, players transferring. And so I have to believe there was some timing issue too about how this had to play out to actually avoid coming into a situation where this was revealed after July 1, which is just a few days from now. And that might have had an impact in terms of penalties or prohibitions in terms of who can play when. So that's a possibility. I can't say that's true for sure, but it certainly would have been a factor in people's minds, I believe, in some cases here. And that may have been a driver for why this happened when it did. But I think it was terrible to have players celebrating playing for a world championship in college baseball not be the center of attention for at least a couple of days. And they weren't, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the unfair part. And also the timing, I get it too. Transfer portal ends July 2nd. Had a number of coaches with different searches reach out and say, look, I got to meet my players. And you can do it by Zoom, but if you don't do it in person, it's just not as effective. And so I get the sense of urgency there, and the sense of urgency, frankly, that the Aggies have right now in their search and getting somebody in place. But again, on the day of the title game, the game 3, I mean, it's bizarre and unfortunate. And, no one's perfect, but why? Well, why take the spotlight off the athletes? And again, it's all about the athletes, right? Well, that the actions speak. Yeah, the actions speak differently.
I thought so.
The actions speak differently in that regard.
A certain coach made the comment, don't judge me by my words, but by my actions. And I had to say, my Lord, what a statement to make after what I've seen. And the fact that it was timed the way it was. I can understand external factors, like I said, the portal, the joining of the SEC by one of the schools, all this could have been a factor. Don't know if it was, but it could have been a factor. And yet the players should have been at the forefront of this whole thing. And all of a sudden they weren't. And all the national media was focusing on one thing that had happened, and not about these great young men who gave everything they had for the schools they represented and met on the field and very even. I mean, you look at the stats of those two teams, Tennessee and Texas A&M, they were virtually identical over those 3 games. Now, one team won 2 and one team won 1. Therefore, we have a championship. Clear, no problem about that. But the actual data on hits, runs, errors, the usual stats we collect were virtually identical, weren't they, Andrew? I mean, you saw this stuff firsthand from your seat. And I just was surprised how evenly matched these teams were, not individually, but as a whole. And that was a story, in my opinion, right there. Yet it never really saw the light of day because everything else overshadowed it.
You know, I have an opportunity to be there. So in Omaha, one thing that I absolutely enjoy is talking with players, and in a couple of different ways. Sometimes they're 12 years old and they go to Omaha to be fans with their teams, and they're looking out on the field and they see those college players. And then 6-7 years later, they're the players that all those young players are coming back. And I sat next to Ryan Prager before game 3 and I said, did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy walking off after throwing, a no-hitter into the 7th inning and coming off? Did you enjoy it when you pitched against Tennessee in game 2? Did you enjoy it? Because it's the last time he's going to walk off. And I asked the same thing of Christopher Cortez. Did you enjoy it? Because you're walking off for the last time, and you're walking off to maybe more Aggies than you would have it at Olsen. It wouldn't be the same atmosphere, but you're looking at about 12,000. It was about even there, about 12,000 fans and a standing ovation behind that dugout. We miss out on the stories like Justin Lampkin. We miss out on the stories like Jace Laviolette with one of the great catches of all time. That all gets pushed into the background because of this drama. And to your point, Doctor, you don't always get the 2 best teams playing for a championship. And they were the 2 best teams. And the Aggies hadn't lost. They hadn't lost in Omaha. And to get out of the bracket, Tennessee's a check swing away. Who knows what happens if they drop game 1 to Florida State? Like that, 3 walk-offs on your first 3 games, 2 on Friday, the first on Saturday, and it's a Jace catch at the wall, over the wall. That's how, the fireworks began. And then to be for Texas A&M to be 1 run shy, for Tennessee to be the first number 1 seed since '99 to win it all. They broke that curse. It's a shame that those storylines that they just got buried, and that's a shame.
Yeah, the water got poured on the fireworks before they went off. And that was just a shame. And that's what I resented the most about this whole thing here. I know coaches come and go. I've dealt with it for many years. No problem with that because it's going to happen. But to happen the way it did just really left a really bad taste in my mouth and a really sinking feeling in my stomach there. And it was all about thinking about these wonderful young men who gave everything they had. And all of a sudden, it wasn't really being talked about and being recognized. And I'm hoping the story will continue for a while.
If I may, there's a number of them who won't be playing any longer. We also lose sight of that. I get Braden Montgomery's going to go in the first round. Another great story of he had never won at Stanford. They were 2 and out. His 2 years he goes with Stanford. His first wins come with Texas A&M. I get all that. I get that. But there's a lot that don't play any longer. So what's it mean for Florida State and Kentucky, NC State, all those guys? That's also getting overshadowed. So I hope they look back at those 10 days or how many and appreciate what that was. But again, there's a selfishness to this that overshadows what are some great accomplishments. But Jason, as a former player, you don't remember always wins and losses, right? You remember what you went through together. And I wonder if that becomes galvanizing in itself. And I also wonder if this, in a way, doesn't jumpstart everything that the former coach wanted that the next coach will get. Certainly going to get an awful lot of momentum from the 12th man.
Oh, yeah. And some of this as well. I saw all of my friends are talking about that right now. They are so angry right now that they're going to write some checks. And so we may see a bounce here, which is not really what a certain coach expected because of what was done, just a bounce because people are reacting and saying, my Lord, what happened here? And how can I really help sort of recompense this whole thing in a way that makes some better sense for us going forward? So we'll see what happens. Jason, when your next book comes out and you dissect this whole event carefully, I'm looking forward to reading that.
Yeah. Well, I've told a couple of friends that have been in the middle of it in some form or fashion. I said, this is a documentary. Write it down. That's a prediction. Anybody want to bet on that one? But yeah, it's just and just a craziest confluence of events that all this came together, and it affected us here in College Station, Texas. So it's going to be a story told decades from now, and it's just a bizarre thing. And again, all of it happened in the timeline, which is so disappointing. This is our best season we've ever had. The best season we've ever had. And we were one run away, or 7 outs away, just however you want to say it, from a national title. And of course, we're not talking about that. And the narrative is now who are we getting as a coach? And Andrew said it really well. That all gets lost. All the Braid Montgomery story and departing seniors, it all gets lost, and that's the unfortunate part. But as you said, Bowen, I get it. Coaches, the changes happen. It's just unfortunate we can't enjoy it a little more.
Yeah.
Can we
Netflix may step into this and deal with a documentary very soon to follow on other things about Texas A&M recently. We'll see.
Can we get Brenham native Evan Aschenbeck his own flavor of Bluebell ice cream?
Love that idea.
If the Cruises were still doing it, and Howard played baseball for us, okay, back in the day. So if the Cruises were still the owners of Bluebell, that'd be a very real thing, Andrew. I don't think the current owners will go that route, quite frankly. Maybe so. But I'll tell you, I was in Brenham just the other day, and I had a great visit there with Lois Colkhorst, who is a state senator, whose son, by the way, pitches for Blinn. So you probably know him, Jason. And we were talking about Evan and what a hero he is to Brenham. Not a big town. What's it got? 8,000 people, something like that there. And yet he is a true local hero there in Brenham, Texas. So if that were still a family-owned operation at Bluebell, I'm sure there'd be an Evan flavor out there. I don't know it'll be coming out now.
All I know is this. He was the very last Aggie still signing autographs after we landed, and a wonderful reception. He stayed for absolutely everyone. Again, he's a true Aggie. Dr. Loftin, I want to kind of shift this in a little way. You used a phrase as we were leading up to this show about in the post-house world. We have to start wrapping our minds around that we're getting into a post-house world now in college athletics, aren't we?
We are indeed. And I've already mentioned a few things to Jason about that. We can also seek some more reaction here. But the House settlement actually hasn't been officially accepted by the judge. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think she's going to sign off on it in due time. It'll be the law of the land then. But this settlement is going to totally redefine college sports, in my opinion. And it's all about the money. It's all about money going to players from the past and players in the future. And I can't say they don't deserve compensation, but there's so many problems to solve right now. So many problems, complicated by the portal, complicated by NIL. I mean, Jason said it earlier. I think NIL is going to be part of the equation, at least the FBS schools deal with. They're going to be able to augment the sort of cap imposed with a settlement on player payments going forward by adding NIL into that. And I'm guessing the winners are going to be the schools that not only have the 20 million plus to pay their players, but other 15, 20, 30 million coming from boosters who are going to be writing the checks to augment that. So you're going to see, I think, budgets of the order of 40 million plus in some of the power schools going forward here. And again, that leaves me really concerned about that boundary between the FBS and the FCS. I was talking just the other day to an FCS president, okay? And he was lamenting this. He's from a pretty well-known and respected and fairly well-to-do school. Yet, how does he navigate this? How does his AD navigate this now as an FCS school who has to somehow be able to make this work? And that's a real question mark right there for this individual. And I think I worry about players who are caught in this situation where they're good enough, but they won't command the money that's possibly available to some. And where do they make their decision? How do they really navigate this right now? Will they have the right advice from a Jason Penry or from an agent or from a parent even? I just don't know the answer to that, Jason. By all means, give us your opinion about this post-house world here we're talking and looking into the mall of right now.
Yeah, so the post, it goes back to my dissertation in 2007. No, I'm serious. In 2007, I did a dissertation, and it had about a dozen athletic directors, SEC, ACC, and Big 12. And then we predicted what was it going to look like in 2022. And this is without house, without NIL and all these things. But it said, look, the acceleration of the divide between the haves and have-nots is going to be incredible. That was in one sentence. That was my 159 pages. And you're really seeing that with the transfer portal and NIL and house. Is there's a power two, and then there's a really thick black line, and then there's the next two, those programs that don't have the revenue generation opportunities that you do at the highest level. So college athletics is going to change, and I'm not sure. I'm in the camp that I'm not sure it's a bad thing. That it's always, everyone has known that's the way that it's shifted, and I'm not sure that it's a bad thing. I think at some point, even in our personal lives, we make a certain income or have a certain number in our banks. We probably want to move to a different subdivision. And I think that's what's happening is these athletic programs are just wanting to be part of certain subdivisions. And if you have money, you can be part of the richest subdivision. And that's just kind of the way it is. What I really have my eye on as it relates to college athletics is many of the programs are enrollment driven, that they're getting some kind of student fee. And you see it even in what I call the next two, the Big 12 and the ACC. Not everyone's self-sustaining, but when you have the demographic cliff, the enrollment cliff that's pending, that's real. And $1.7 trillion in debt, that's real and growing, and the ability to control costs. Bowen, I've heard you discuss that on previous podcasts. I think at some point that trustees and presidents, campus CEOs are going to have to make decisions on that. Is this a race we want to run? We can't win the race. Why are we running this race? Let's go to a different subdivision. But that's what I have my eye on in the next 5 to 10 years. And revenue generation is a big piece of that. And I think it'll be even more important. And that's why I'm helping with fundraising.
So he may have actually killed his own college sport. That's not necessarily a given, but it's a possibility given how this works out. I guess a question I want to ask you, maybe you put your end in the ground. Do you think that conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC will come together as a conference and say, here's how we're going to divide up the pay for play. Here's how we're going to divide up the money, which we're going to have to give to athletes now. You have a chance of doing equitably, everybody gets the same amount of money, or you can really lump it where the 85% is, which is in football, or something in between. Do you see any conversations converging as far as how a conference rather than a school might lead out and say, we're going to do this as a conference to make sense, rather than having each school individually figure out, as the settlement sort of suggests, how much to give each player?
Yeah, and I think I've heard Jon talk about it on a previous podcast of y'all's, but I think without a collective bargaining agreement, and I mean, would that be collusion? I'm not sure. That's a great question, though. Jon, I think I've heard you talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be, it's where the money goes. Again, follow the money. Football's going to get the lion's share of it. Football may be its own separate entity when this is all said and done. And then everything that makes money will be there will be dollars, projected against that. We've seen what's happening with women's basketball. The NCAA, one of the things we don't talk about is, again, the ratings this weekend for the games in the College World Series. All right. Second highest rated telecast ever. 2.8 million people were watching. 3.3 were actually watching on the Monday night game, which was the highest watched television event this year between any stick and ball sport at any level. Okay. They beat the Dodger Yankees game. All right. That was on Fox a while back. So there's people that are tuning in for this that are generating money. And as that money flows in, I mean, I think, again, it's all going to flow. The majority of that money is going to flow to, to help settle these house and these new expenses to pay for your players, just like it does in the professional leagues. This is, again, don't have to look any further. Not that hard, fellas. Just take the NFL model, the MLB, the professional model. They've already gone through all this stuff. They've been doing it for 40 years. Just take that same playbook and run it. All right. But who's going to be the first one to do it? And I think that's where it goes. And some sports aren't going to make the cut. It's the nature of the beast. Could they be club sports? Absolutely. I mean, the Ivy League plays without scholarships, and they seem to be doing just fine. So there will be a new, just like you talked about, Jason, different neighborhoods for different people who want to play, and that will still be a collegiate experience for those, and they'll still have fun going to their baseball games or their football games on Saturdays. But at this level, we're going to be a lot closer to the NFL than we are going to be the Ivy League. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
Jason, a question for you, Jason. You might know the answer to this. I haven't tried to research it myself. Clearly, football makes the money. Men's basketball can, especially if you have some NCAA appearances and the shares bill over time. You can more than break even there. Is there any sustainable baseball program that's more than broken even over the years?
Yeah, it's in their SEC programs. They're Arkansas and LSU's been it's been documented that they've turned a profit. Of course, they've spent less than they brought in. But and by the way, John, I like how you said that, because I played small college baseball, and frankly, I wasn't even a good small college baseball player, but it didn't make me less than. I still. Andrew talked about it earlier. I was part of a team.
Yeah.
We won together. We lost together. We picked each other up. It taught us life's lessons.
In the real world, I've got a buddy of mine who has a business, and he says he will not hire a person who has not played a team sport.
Yeah. There are so many life lessons taught, not on the field or on the court, and I think sometimes you lose sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, John, a totally different question for you as a media expert. This past week, we had an interesting case resolved, at least at the first level, and that was a lawsuit against the NFL.
Been interesting to see some of the discovery on that, on what the league was looking at, potentially selling a separate set of package of all those games to all their existing partners that could then exploit them in another matter. So again, it was all about the revenue generation. And at the end of the day, the $2 billion they got from DirecTV, they said, all right, that's probably the most money that we can exploit from this provider versus trying to parcel those games around everywhere else. And I think the case that was brought about was, again, if you're a Bears fan living in Texas, why do I have to buy the whole package when I just want to watch the Bears games? And so I think that's the fundamental issue here, that the court ruled in favor of the fans that brought that class action suit, saying that, yeah, you shouldn't have had to pay for the Seahawks or the Patriots, or you should have just been able to watch your Bears games. So, I think so.
The reason I asked,
don't think that'll have much impact on the college athletic space at all.
The one example I can think of, I have to buy ESPN Plus to be able to watch all the SEC games, even though I have SEC Network somewhere else. And I've got, the broadcast. I still have to pay ESPN specifically, or Disney, to be able to watch everything.
Jason Penry, thank you so much for joining us. Outstanding. Love the expertise, the knowledge. College baseball fan, right? That zooms you right to the top. Thank you so much for joining us for this hour.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew, voice of the Aggies, and Bowen and John. Always a pleasure to talk with you guys. So much fun. And you ever want to talk college baseball, I'm your guy. Please include me, please.
That's a deal.
This won't be your last guest appearance, Jason.
Okay, count on it.
That's great. Dr. Loftin, Jon Heidtke, not just happy anniversary for show number 61, 3 years and still going. Happy 4th of July to both of you as well.
Thank you.
For our producer, Nick Savage, Richard Zane helping him as well, for Dr. Loftin, for Jon Heidtke, for our guest, Jason Penry. I'm Andrew Monaco. A reminder, collegesportsftm@gmail.com. You send your email questions, we'll answer them on a future episode. We thank you so much for joining us. So long, everybody.